This is Jesus, James, and Mark, and I'm Mark.
And I'm James.
Welcome to episode 41 of our fine program, which is a podcast, two men, myself, I'm Mark, Chop, James, as he does not like to be called.
Chop works.
But you can hear us so many ways, like on Apple Podcast, on Spotify. You can get us on iHeart, and you can get us on Amazon or Audible, as it's called. Find us on YouTube and find us on Facebook. We'd love to hear from you. Like, subscribe, share the experience. Send us an email at JesusJamesMark@gmail.com.
And we want to remind everybody that we're just two regular guys reading the Bible and discussing it, hoping that we can influence or inspire other people to do the same thing. And we like to go by 1 Corinthians chapter 2. We know nothing but Christ and Him crucified.
Yes. And it's funny because I called you James twice. Well, no. Jesus, I called you James once. You called yourself James.
Yeah, I mean.
But we were talking just before the show about what heaven was going to be like, which we don't know, and whether or not
I'm assuming it's going to be fantastic.
Whether or not, I think it's going to be the best thing ever. But we were discussing whether or not Jesus was going to call Chop, or whether he was going to call him James, or whether again, these are this is the stuff that doesn't quite make the podcast, but we give you a little taste of it, just to let you know. Man, this is going to be fun today, I think.
Yeah, I think so too.
Because we're going into Genesis 12 today, and this is the introduction of Abram, who will later become Abraham.
Yep. And
he is known as the father of faith, and so there's a lot to go on there. Also, here we go, because current events be what they are, there is a lot of discussion, especially amongst Christians and Western Christians, about Israel and the Christian commitment.
What should a Christian's relationship be with Israel?
And this is big, right? Because this is the story of Abraham is another one of the covenants. So the last one we had was the one with Noah, where the flood had happened, and God said, I will not flood the earth and wipe out mankind in that way. And then the rainbow would be the symbolic remembrance of that covenant. And then we've gone through all of these years, and then we're about to hit this point of the story of Abram, who is going to get a command from God, is going to get a word from God, and from that word, he's going to show immense faith in it and step into that faith. And so this is why he's considered the father of faith. But this is where the promise comes in that it has been referenced so many times about why is it important for us as Christians to support Israel, and it's because of this promise, this covenant that was made between God and Abraham, because this is when God formed his people. Remember, we just came off of the Tower of Babel. The nations sprung forth from this. This is how we became different nations and different languages, and we go from there to a nation created for God. God wanted to pull a nation out and separate them from the rest, and that
make
was
them
Israel.
unique. That they had a different lifestyle, different set of rules to follow. They were set aside. They were cut out from the rest as God's chosen people, and this is the beginning of that.
Yeah. So there's. We were talking before the show today that I don't know if, and we've said this so many times, mostly with the Mark study that we did, that this may be several episodes, but I think
Yes.
12, 13, 14, Genesis 12, 13, 14, all that is probably going to be the next few episodes for a while.
Yes.
And I don't know how much further out of 12 we might get today once we start bringing in something like Romans 11.
Right.
Because it's going to happen. And, so what, before we get started in that, the first thing I want to introduce is the idea of this, because it doesn't get talked about a lot, but I feel like, and I think you know this too, it's sort of one of the unspoken things about people that we don't really speak about because it's unspoken.
Right.
I am the president of the redundancy department at the Department of Redundancy. And so so there's a lot of people who believe that everything from Genesis up until now is that's kind of the mythology of the world. Would you not agree? Because this is where a lot of people really say, well, from Genesis 12 up, that's where I kind of mark the history of mankind, if you will. If we're going to go on the, I'm using air quotes here, historical document argument, then I'm going to go from, even though we've had all of these begats, which you and I, carefully told you this is the reason why it's in there, because people are going to lean towards the idea. I just don't know how much I really believe from Genesis 1 through Genesis 11. Now
and they think a lot of it is symbolic, that it's not actual stuff. They were just using it as analogies or symbolism or whatever, and it gets that rap. A lot of the Old Testament gets that.
Yes,
that thought.
I agree that a lot of the Old Testament does, but I just wanted to point that out because. I personally, I think there's some symbolism? Yeah, I think there's a lot of symbolism in that from Genesis 1 through 11 and all the Old Testament. But I think there's a very literal statement there. I have to take it at its word because it is the word. Right. And I believe the word because the word was God and the word is God. Right. Am I right about this? Anyway, so let's... I don't know where to start other than I think we should establish at least where this begins as far as the promise, right?
Yes.
Let's and I'm interested to see where my Bible study is at because look at that. I'm in Genesis 11. That is good. Which I love going, but so obviously I'm going back here. Let's go to 12 because that's where I want to start here. And I think there's one thing I want to say before we start here. And what I love about this is there's a pattern that's going to start here. Aside from where we start talking about Romans 11, and because I'm going to set this, and this may be a theme that gets hit on in the next episode or two or whatever, is that God commands, right?
Mm-hmm.
If God says, okay, then Abram obeys, and then God fulfills that promise. Mm-hmm. You're going to see that over and over again, and then you're going to see these examples of where. And what's so interesting is the duality, if you will, of he is the father of faith. He believed in God, and God fulfilled those promises. But there are all these stories too around Abram.
Yeah.
Abraham, and we're going to get this out of the way. It's Abram and Sarai to begin with, and they become Abraham and Sarah. Yes. And so if Chop and I call them Abraham or Sarah, just understand that they're not quite that in the story where we're at, but that's who they eventually become.
Yeah, and that is their names known throughout history.
Yes.
Abraham and Sarah.
But you're going to see where Abraham will also, despite being faithful and listening to God's commands, often has these moments where he just does his own thing. Where he's like, I'm just going to take matters into my own hands and do what I think. And it's not, and again, we always read this like, oh, Abram, we do it. I mean, we all do it. We don't consult and we just, hey, this was the thing I thought I should have done. and you're going to see where God still saves him from that, in spite of that. So,
well, I mean, there's a whole lot riding on this guy. So there, I mean,
yes,
you know,
we're not suggesting go keep doing what you want to do.
Yeah.
That's a bad philosophy. I'm not trying to say that at all. I'm just saying, in spite of his sometimes trying to do his own thing, God still pulls him into. And
you will notice that Abraham kind of dives into his human side, and then he always comes back to God, right? I mean, that's he knows. It's like he actually understands when he has strayed, and so he always comes back.
All right, this is Genesis 12. It says, this is from the New King James Version, verse 1. Now the Lord said to Abram, get out of your country, from your family and from your father's house, to a land that I will show you. I will make you a great nation. I will bless you and make your name great, and you shall be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and I will curse him who curses you. And in you all the families of the earth shall be blessed. So Abram departed as the Lord had spoken to him, and Lot went with him. And Abram was 75 years old when he departed from Haran. Then Abram took Sarai his wife, and Lot his brother's son, and all their possessions that they had gathered, and the people whom they had acquired in Haran, and they departed to go to the land of Canaan. So they came to the land of Canaan. Abram passed through the land to the place of Shechem, as far as the terebinth tree of Moreh, these names, and the Canaanites were then in the land. Then the Lord appeared to Abram and said, to your descendants I will give you this land. And there he built an altar to the Lord who had appeared to him. And he moved from there to the mountain east of Bethel, and he pitched his tent with Bethel on the west and Ai on the east, where he built an altar to the Lord and called on the name of the Lord. So Abram journeyed, going on still toward the south. So we'll stop there.
Yeah.
Because this is basically where the promise, where God gives the command and fulfills this promise, and this is where this often quoted, especially now in current times.
Oh yeah.
Why do Christians continue to bless Israel? Because in this first promise, in God's promise to him, says, I will bless those who bless you, and I will curse those who curse you, and I will bless many nations because of you. And again, tells them to go out. Now, I wanted to really say this. This is sometimes one of the things that we don't hit on enough sometimes, but this is part of that faith too. God said, go to the land I will show you. There is no direction there. That means walk, and when I tell you to stop, that's when you'll know. And that is scary for anybody to think. That means get up and just step into something you don't know.
Right.
And keep going until I tell you to stop.
And Abraham did that.
And he did. And when you're reading this, it may sound like it was him and his wife and
his nephew
and his nephew's wife. But I mean, he probably had a ton of, first off, probably had amassed some stuff.
Like
he probably had servants, had all these things. And by the way, can we bring up the fact again, when he's given the promise, he's 75 years old.
Right.
75 years old. Are you 33 and going, where are you at? Where's all this? He's like, relax. You're not even in your 70s yet. No, I'm just joking. But in all seriousness,
I think Abraham lived to be like 172. I think
he did. Yeah, so. He did. So, just using a little. But I got to say, that's still quite amazing when you think about it. 75 years old.
And just start walking until I tell you to quit.
Even if we use some sort of math that says, well, that was a 30 that had to have been a 30 or 40 year old maybe in our culture, right? Could you imagine the scariness of a 30 or 40-year-old. Uproot everything right now and go. Where? I don't know. Just go, and when you're there, I'll let you know you're there.
And I want to make a little bit of a point that this promise is made to Abraham and his descendants. I think when people mention Israel today, they get focused on the country and the government of Israel. This is talking about a people. This is God's chosen people. He's about to cut this group of people out as a separate. This is going to be his people. And those are the people he's talking about. If you bless, I will bless you. If you curse, I will curse you. I like to separate it from the government political side of it, because there's people who are descendants from Abraham who are bad people, no doubt. But as a people, as a whole, this is his people, and I think we as believers have to be on that side of this discussion.
Yeah.
And I think that the Bible tells you to do that.
I do too. And then look, I'm with you. So there's a couple of things. One, while I'm saying this, I think you should go ahead and have Romans 11 ready. So we probably need to go ahead and bring this in.
There's also, I want to mention before we go there,
right,
that this covenant is mentioned 3 times in Genesis. This actually described a little bit better in chapter 15.
Yes.
Where they talk about cutting the animal and walking. In that covenant, I did a little research on covenants, and it was normally they would do something like that or have a meal or whatever. The covenant, the parties in the covenant would walk between the dismembered animal as a symbolic show of this is what could happen if you break this covenant. It was a very they took it very serious.
It's more serious than what we would consider a legal contract.
Yes. And as it's described in 15, God was the only one that walked through the animal. This is a covenant God made, and he said, I am the one that's carrying the full burden of this covenant I made with you. This is going to happen. He's saying nothing's going to break it. He didn't even Abraham didn't even have to walk through the carcass, because Abraham can't break the covenant. The covenant is something God made with this people. And I think that's important that we understand that this covenant's never going to end. It's called everlasting 4 or 5 times through the Old Testament. And in the New Testament, I think it's mentioned as the everlasting covenant. This is not going anywhere.
Yeah. Again, it's unbelievable that this man begins this walk and that God is going to bless him in this way. And I think that when you were talking about the descendants, again, for God to say, I'm going to bless you and I'm going to bless your descendants, I'm going to make this covenant with you, and I'm going to, as you were talking about, what does this mean? You brought up, and you were sort of hitting on this, because people want to know specifically, does this mean the country of Israel? It means some people that live within the country of Israel, but it also means some Jewish people that live elsewhere. For us to identify who these Jewish people are would be impossible. Because we don't know. This is, so when we read about this, this is what's, because I think there's a philosophy too, because you talked about this covenant and the fact that it gets mentioned again. There's the covenant, the ultimate covenant was the covenant of Jesus, right? That was the last one we needed, the perfect covenant. But his covenant didn't wipe away. It just fulfilled and strengthened the previous covenants that God had made.
Yeah.
Was that so? The fact of the matter is that if your thought is, well, there's Jesus now. There's the Christians. The Jews have already turned away from Christ because, again, when he was crucified, there's still Jewish people who still don't recognize him as the Messiah. Because this is ultimately what had happened. You and I did the Gospel of Mark first, and that was the Jesus ministry. And ultimately, a Jewish man who a lot
Right.
of people still look at as and it was interesting to hear the Ben Shapiro argument of he was a Jewish man who wanted to lead a revolt against the Romans and was killed for it.
Right.
And so in the practical thought of that is, yes, however, that doesn't explain the fact that he rose from the dead in an open tomb, okay, then appeared before his followers and then ascended to heaven.
Yeah.
Which is one of the parts we don't hit on that one enough. And I've been really breaking this down over the years. Now we're going to get to this Romans 11 thing. There's Jesus ascending to the throne, and again, remember this: the Jewish people didn't recognize him, but this was the Son of Man that Daniel recognized was going to ascend on the right hand. So that the people that witnessed that ascension, that was a fulfillment of the Old Testament, a prophecy of this would be how you would recognize
and the
Messiah.
Jewish people have a hard time with Isaiah 53 or 52, whichever one it is, where it basically gives a description of Christ as he was in the New Testament, the crucifixion. I mean, it pretty much lays out the whole process in Isaiah, which is Old Testament, which is most Jews will stand behind. They have a hard time not pointing that towards Christ in the New Testament because it's such a. I mean, it 100%. If you read that out and said, "Who's that talking about?" Most Jews would be like, "Oh, they're talking about Christ," and then you go like, "Oh, that's Isaiah," and they go like, "What?"
Right.
Yeah, they can't believe that that's Old Testament.
Yeah.
Speaking.
And again, it just go. And again, this is the thing. And so what? First off, for starters, again. So let's go back to the principles of. I don't know what it means to support Israel as far as what you feel like you need to do. It's the people. I understand the governments if your disagreement, but look, here's what I've always said. There's half the people in our country don't agree with the government half the time anyway. So you're not going to agree certainly with other people's governments. But we've talked about that last week. Look, all these people are put in place
Right.
By a sovereign Lord for a reason.
And we have to believe that
bad.
they're all in line
Right.
doing the work of God. God's plan will be fulfilled, and whatever has to happen for that to take place, that's what's going to happen.
Yes.
And we don't necessarily have to understand all of it, but we do need to understand that this people that He made this covenant with is the reason we have salvation. Which is what Romans 11 touches on. It lets us know that without this people being cut out as God's people so that they could be treated differently and taught differently and have different customs, without that, there would not be the line of David. There would not be the Son of Man. There wouldn't be the Jewish Sanhedrin, or was it the Sanhedrin? Yeah, the Sanhedrin. They wouldn't have been in place to rip their robes. Caiaphas would have never been there. Without this all happening, the crucifixion wouldn't have happened, and salvation wouldn't have happened for the Gentiles. Because of Israel, we have salvation.
Yeah, and that's again ultimately to break it down to even further. It's about similar to then as is to now, and Paul is going to talk about this in Romans 11. Is that one for starters? Yes, one is as you're a Christian now, and if you're a non-messianic Jew, which means you weren't raised Jewish and then were converted to believe that Jesus was the Messiah, then you are what's called a Gentile, and so you are basically grafted in. Thank you, Jesus.
Yes.
Into being part of God's people, because and what you're going to read is or what Chop is getting ready to read is going to be about this. The fact of the matter is, one, yes, we would not have been able to recognize this. The fact what we have the historic, yes, that Jesus existed. That Jesus performed these miracles, that Jesus rose from the dead and did all these things. But how could we have because if anybody had a system of legalism, like any other nation, it was the Israelites.
Yeah.
Because they kept the law. They were the keepers of the law. The law was perfect in every way. And how do you, well, then you have to go by the law. You have to say, how is he the Messiah? Well, if he checks all these boxes, well, then that's how you fulfill and recognize the Messiah. Now, people didn't then and still today, because they're the Messiah that they focus on is what we as Christians are considered the second coming of Christ. Same guy coming back again.
Mm-hmm.
This will be, and this is just my interpretation, but I don't think I'm alone in this. What Chop's going to read is that the Jewish nation that still doesn't recognize Jesus as the Messiah had a hardening of their hearts that they weren't going to believe it no matter what, because they still expected the second coming Messiah, as to speak Christianese to everybody.
Right.
So that only in that second coming, in my opinion, is going to be when their eyes are open,
right.
And then they understand. Oh,
and there's discussion about how many and what part of Israel will be redeemed, but we do have to understand that there are. I'm sure there's going to be people from Israel, from the line of Abraham, that don't get to heaven.
Sure. But
there is going to, this people, and something else, I don't want to make light of it, but by being the chosen people, that descendant of Abraham have suffered tremendously through history.
Yes.
If you look at the Babylonian captivity, the 400 years of slavery in Egypt, right up to the Holocaust, every time they fell away from, there was punishment for their non-belief. Whenever they fall away from their belief in God, the Jewish people have suffered. And I honestly think that's not done. I think that some of this modern day stuff that's happening now is some more of that suffering. And again, I'm not trying to defend anything that the government of Israel does. I'm not trying to get political about it at all.
Right.
I'm just saying that the people of Israel are God's chosen people. And as Romans 11 says, once we're grafted into that tree, we become part of that people because of them.
Yes. And so if you're on the other side of this too, I don't imagine we have a ton of maybe Jewish people who would be listening. So we
can hope.
But yeah, we could, and if you are, yes, and so I understand that. So again, as I say, it is in my belief that in that second coming, and again, I don't, as I've often said, as human beings, the idea that you or I can determine who is going to be saved and who is not going to be saved, who is going to be in heaven, who is not going to be in heaven. I think you can read a lot, you can certainly follow, but as far as who makes that decision, I always say that because there's a lot of people who are going to say, how is God going to come back? And then these people who never believed in Jesus this whole time are all of a sudden going to be just brought back in. And I always go to one, thief on the cross. So if you're telling me that God can't in a moment, someone who is, as you were talking about, there are people that have been absolutely loyal to the old system of the law, and as I said, are going to be grafted back in, and like I said, this language is incredible to talk about because we are described as a bigger root because again, God went, there was all of us, and He loved all of us.
He did.
And then we get too big for our britches, we get scattered. He pulls a nation from all of us so that I can keep my ways, and that's what's interesting. So to me, the one bit, and so say what you want, when it comes to morality and all of these, what we call Christian principles, that comes from the old 10 Commandments, the Jewish laws. I mean, it was that lifestyle that absolutely was kept and nourished and thrived. And quite honestly, in barbaric, and you think about the empires that could have, if they'd have had God's blessing, what the world.
It's been mentioned by certain people in public eye that our Constitution is based off of laws that you can find in Deuteronomy. Like
yes.
the way that their structure was laid out for authority in Deuteronomy is basically how we based our Constitution on how things should be here.
All right, so for everybody that wants to or doesn't want to, we're doing it anyway. So we're going to Romans 11 to for you to understand. So to go back to again. So God pulled a nation out. They kept the laws. They kept and there was the prophets. There was all of this lineage leading up to Jesus, right? And then because so think about this. So think about this. This was a small, like a big pie. So and then there's like a small piece of it that's the Israelites. And then they stay that small part of the pie, and then Jesus comes, okay, and first to the Jews,
yep,
ones that accepted him, which were some, not all,
yep,
and then he took those, and then he opened that out to the Gentiles, which was everybody else. And that gets described when you read this as like this root, because now we're going back to so I go from a pie to think about it as a tree. So think about a small section of the tree, a branch or whatever, right, if you will, because that's actually the terminology
that's the symbolism used in it. The
symbolism used in it is it's a tree, but it's the bigger part of the tree that's why it was there.
And he talks about as long as the root is good. So the foundation he made with Israel to start with, as other nations get grafted in, that root is what makes everybody part of the picture of salvation.
Yes. Oh, go ahead.
So I'll just start at the very beginning, and this is Paul speaking to the people that were believers in Rome.
Right.
And it says, "I say then, has God cast away his people? Certainly not." So I'm assuming that the message was people were saying, so are the Jews out? And he was like, no, the Jews aren't out.
No.
"For I also am an Israelite of the seed of Abraham of the tribe of Benjamin." So he's in this same group. "God has not cast away his people whom he foreknew. Or do you not know that the scripture says of Elijah, how he pleased with God against Israel, saying, Lord, they have killed your prophets and torn down your altars, and I alone am left, and they seek my life. But what does the divine response say to him? I have reserved for myself 7,000 men who have not bowed the knee to Baal. Even so, then, at this present time, there is a remnant according to the election of grace. And if by grace, then, it is no longer of works, otherwise grace is no longer grace." I want to skip ahead to chapter 11, or verse 11, where it says, "I say then, have they stumbled that they should fall? Certainly not." He repeats this over and over, where it's almost like they keep asking, they almost want to get rid of Israel or the Jews altogether. Right. And he keeps reminding them that it's not happening.
I got to say, and so you say that, doesn't that feel similar to what we're doing now?
Very similar,
like
yeah.
Christians now are like, man, why are we still holding on to this, man?
Yeah,
we don't need that. I know the Bible is an ancient book, but I mean, man, it's very familiar.
That's through this whole chapter, and I'll jump up here to where it says, "You will say then, branches were broken off that I might be grafted in." And what he's talking about is there are parts of Israel that have failed, right? And those branches get broken off and get done away with, and that is where the rest of the nations get grafted in. And the reason you get grafted in is because there was a branch there to be broken off. And what he's trying to say is that without Israel, we are not where we are right now with salvation. We can't shun Israel. We can't just completely throw them to the side and say they're not important. This chapter 11 or verse 11 in chapter 11 in Romans definitely clears that up.
It to me, again, it's how can you you would not be able to recognize Jesus without it, and in that regard, would not be able to receive the salvation that he grants or the kingdom that he presents, because again, you, in order to believe this, and this is why you and I say, I don't want to, if you're in a church that doesn't go back and talk about the Old Testament and just wants to focus on the New Testament, I think that, one, I would raise an eyebrow, and two, I don't know how, to me, the promise is more validated by having that Old Testament there.
And there's one more part of chapter 11 that I feel like is very important, because it talks about grafting branches of Israel back in.
This is important, yes.
It is, for they were cut out of the olive tree, which is wild by nature, and were grafted contrary to nature to the olive tree. How much more will these, who are natural branches, be grafted into their own olive tree? So when the branches that were broken off get grafted back in, it'll be even more stronger for that section of Israel when it comes back to the belief. And to me, it just speaks of the inevitable redemption of this people. Now, I'm not saying everybody descended from these tribes is going to heaven. I don't have any clue how that's going to work out. But this people, are they going to have a redemptive moment with God before the end of everything?
Well, that says yes.
It does.
That says there's going to be people that are coming back in.
And I do believe there'll be a deception in the end when the Antichrist shows up. Jews are they're going to think that's the original Messiah, and there will be a deception then. But like you said, when the actual second coming of Jesus happens, there's going to be a big revival, I think, of the Jewish people.
Well, that's for our Revelation discussion.
I have one thing that I have to mention out of Revelations today.
Okay.
Because I'm telling you,
because there is a tie-in back to this, right?
Yeah, and
yes.
all I want to, the only point I want to make is that if we feel like that Israel is not important, or that this covenant isn't going to last forever, this to me, when I read this, I was like, well, there's no question to it, because when it talks about Jesus after Satan is defeated, he is going to put a new Jerusalem, and the new Jerusalem is going to have 12 gates, and on the top of each of these gates are going to be 12 names. You want to guess what them 12 names are?
Why don't you just tell
They're
everybody?
The 12 tribes of Israel are going to be written on the gates of New Jerusalem. I don't know how more clear it could be that Israel will be, that they are the chosen people. I mean, we can't shun them. We have to be on the right side of that conversation. And again, I would love to separate the political side of it altogether. I don't want to be any part of the political talk of it. But the people of Israel, whatever their role is going to be, it will be fulfilled at the end.
Yeah. Let me. I got my glasses are falling on the floor here. So backup pair is here. Backup pair just didn't make it. Oh no. Gotta go on the floor. Live podcasting, folks. Yeah. Live podcasting.
Are you all right?
Yeah. I'm having a moment here, a senior moment. When it comes to this, you're right about the incredible. I mean, it jumps off the page at you when you read Romans 11, and then you go back to 12, and there's so many times, as I said. Now, I was trying to do a cross reference of how many times it's just so many times, and I may have typed it in wrong, but because my glasses broke. But that being said, it's amazing the amount of clarification you get when people ask that question to you. Why is it important for us to support Israel? And again, this is the definition becomes, and this is where I think you have to say, listen, I don't know the answer, because people want to throw this at you. And I think the reason why they throw it at you is because they don't want you to support Israel, which means to me, always means these people that we're talking about, the people that are going to be grafted back in. And I don't know who these people are. I do not know. I would say they are Jewish people who are going to eventually be brought back into the kingdom. So until they get brought to my attention as to who they are, I just have to support Israel and Jewish people in general, because I don't know what else to do other than to do what I've been told to do, is bless Israel and not curse Israel, because it clearly says to me, as you mentioned in Romans, and then the thing as we go into Revelation, and the fact that those 12 tribes are right there.
Yeah,
it's all a fulfillment of a promise that, again, if you're saying, I feel like if you're trying to say, well, who is it? Do I support the government? So you're saying support the... No, look, what am I saying? Send money to the government of Israel? No, but if it's a compelling to want, there are certainly ways that you can help out people that are going through the struggles. It could mean your prayers. It could mean your thoughts. It could be steering your heart in the direction of, instead of going, I'm going to wipe my hands with all of this, because it says for you not to do that. And to be honest with you, I'm going to go back to the original command of love your neighbor like you love yourself. And I'm going to tell you that's even harder, because he goes on the Sermon on the Mount to say, it's easy to say love your friend. And I challenge you to love your enemy. So as much as, again, if you're trying to say don't support Israel, how can you believe that and then yet believe what Jesus says when he says love your neighbor or love your enemy? So I understand it's difficult, because, well, wait a minute. Is that saying I'm supposed to love the Palestinian people? Yes. The people? Yes. People that do bad things? No. I am in no way do you and I ever suggesting people who go out to maliciously hurt people. Are we trying to support that? But there are obviously just people, and God wants us to love them. And so, as I said, I don't know other than to do what God has told me to do, and that means to honor these things. One, to bless Israel, because I will bless those who bless Israel, and I will curse those who don't. And as I said, to love my neighbor like I love myself. And as long as I'm applying those standards, and honestly, if we just get back to that standard, that would solve all the problems we would have. If we'd all just start loving our neighbor like we love ourselves, man, would that absolutely. But the problem is, and I hate to do this because we're near the end of the podcast here, the problem is, Chop, people don't love themselves very much. So you're asking people to love their neighbors as they love themselves, and I think sadly what we're seeing is this is how people feel about themselves, and they're just projecting it outwardly to their neighbors. And so, man, that is a sad state of affairs, and I know that that's not everybody, so I'm not painting a broad brush on everybody. I think there's a lot of good people out there.
There are a lot of good people, but we have to understand.
Don't be sucked into it. Don't be sucked into the hate.
We can easily be swayed on our opinions by the few bad people that we see representing anything, right? Yes. So anything can be represented poorly, and most of the time that's the thing that gets the most airtime is the bad side of things. But I would recommend anybody to read through Romans. I would read the whole book of Romans and really dial in on what it means in these chapters. 9, 10, and 11 speak very highly of Israel being the reason salvation even exists, and as to why we as the Gentiles could have the gift of everlasting life is because Israel was set aside by God for an everlasting covenant with this people. Now, what that people looks like at the end, that's for God to decide. He's gonna have his people are gonna be his people, and there's nothing we can do about it. But we have to be on the right side of this discussion.
Yes, and again, your job is to catch the fish. Let God sort them. Like I said, but let's try to kind of put a bow tie on this as we can, as much as we can, and because I don't think we can get to Egypt.
Yeah, because there's a few suitcases need unpacking on that too.
I mean, there's a lot of so as I said, I don't know if I can open the door to what happens at Egypt right now. But as I was going to say, this is a great way to tease what we're getting ready to talk about with Abram going to Egypt.
Yeah,
is that look, if you feel like how can I relate to these Israel people? Which because we don't call them Israelites anymore, do we? You know, but
Israelis.
The Israelis. How can I relate to because when you look at the history of them, you're like, how could I relate to these people that get blessed by God, only to turn their back on Him and start doing everything the wrong way and serving themselves and then going, oh no, God, what have I done? Please save me from myself. And then only to be saved by God. Only to run away and then do the whole thing. And does that sound like any people you know? Sounds a lot like Christian people in general.
Yes.
And listen, this is not me pointing a finger at anybody other than myself too. So to say that you couldn't relate is ridiculous in itself.
These people were just as human as we are, just as human.
God, and you brought that. The fact we are all created in this way, but yet we will find every little thing to try to separate why I can't relate to that person. But you can. You can. You're just not trying.
And I think Abram is going to look very relatable in the next podcast.
This and what's a bizarre story, by the way. And what you're going to see here, and I've mentioned this earlier, is this is how many times that God says to Abram, go do this, and then He blesses him, and he's like, man, God is awesome. And then something happens, and then he's like, I'm going to just do something myself. I'm going to just do it my own way. And then things kind of go sideways.
Yeah.
Wow, is that just the story I was just telling? And then he's kind of got to, get in the, it's absolutely a mess.
That sounds like a lot of my stories.
I do, and I want to tease this because I'm going to use this again next week because I do know that, one of the great things is I thought when it was just you and I doing this podcast that it would be just a bunch of guys watching us, and so shout out to all the dudes. But the data suggests that we're about 50-50, so the women are watching too, and I do want to say. There's something that really stood out to me when I was reading this last night. So just to tease this, so we're getting ready to talk about this famine, and Abram's going to go into Egypt to solve the problem.
Right.
And one of the things he does is he recognizes that his wife is beautiful, and sort of gives her this backhanded compliment of, man, you're really beautiful. They're going to kill me though. So I'm going to kind of put you up as like it's really, but I did want to say it hit me last night, and it had not ever hit me until last night. And by the way, whenever you're listening, it's Independence Day.
It is
so
July 4th.
July 4th.
Thank you, veterans.
Yes, absolutely. But I have to say, it hit me that so if he's 75, or 76. I don't know how many, however, he gets the promise when he's 75. I can't imagine the next day the famine hits and he's got to go to Egypt.
I do know I read that Sarai was 65, I think, when they went.
So she's 65.
Yeah.
This woman is so beautiful, okay, so he makes this comment, which seems like a backhanded comment until they get into Egypt.
Yeah.
And she is so beautiful that everybody notices, and then they go and tell the king. So I have got to tell you, for a 65-year-old woman, shout out to,
Sarah lives to be 127, so she's only halfway through her life.
She's only halfway through.
It would be like a 70-year-old woman at 35.
I'm just still saying.
Yeah. 65.
Don't step on a woman's moment like that. Like, hey, this ain't, just she went in, oh, she was, in her in her 20s, or, she was just a young woman. Or it's like, no, this is a 65, 60, who knows, maybe 70 even. Who knows how long it was. between then and then. But I've got to say,
famines last a long time. They might have been in Egypt a minute.
Yeah, who knows? But I thought that was really. But I'm sure I'll bring that up again next week in the podcast. But I hope we at least, because I felt like when we were talking yesterday, that was one of the things we wanted to hit on. This was our opportunity, since we were right here at the Promise, and since this is everything that we're talking about. And you and I were talking about the Ben Shapiro, John MacArthur thing, and I love all of this. I watched a ton of that stuff, and what I did see, and again, this is not me judging Shapiro at all, but it was, you could just still see like Shapiro's like, nah, not the Messiah. I'm still waiting for the. You could like, and again, I'm putting words into Ben Shapiro's face. Because he didn't say these things, but watching it, it just seemed like he was like, I'm still not ready to recognize
the prophecy said he would be rejected. He is still being rejected today.
Still being rejected.
By the people, by the chosen people.
Right. So, anyways, there we go. So we probably need to get out of here. I do hope that we did a decent job of trying to. So
if nothing else, I hope it gets your interest
go read 12,
go get your and pray on it. And discuss it with people that you trust, and have a conversation about what these scriptures mean.
Yes, and yes, right there, go to Genesis 12, then go to Romans 11, and then follow the rabbit hole as it takes you where you need to go.
And look at the end of Revelations, where the new world is being made, and how big a role the people of Israel are going to have at that moment.
That is, as I said, so. Absolutely. Let's do this though. Probably need to wrap this up. So let's do a real quick prayer. Heavenly Father, thank you for getting us through the podcast. We are very grateful for your mercy and your love. We want to pray for all of our Christian family, but certainly everything that's going on with our Jewish brothers and sisters, and everything that's going on in all the world. And let's be honest, that could definitely use a lot more you. But we thank you for all things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
All right, we'll see you next time. Be episode 42. More
going to
Abram.
Egypt. We're going to Egypt.
Going to Egypt. Not a good place.